Recording in progress.
Hello and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast. I'm your host, Ron Tate, and with me I have a very special guest with me this week.
Very special,
Yes,
special
very
in many
special.
ways.
Let me introduce my very special guest. It's Isabel.
Hello, fancy
Hello.
meeting you here. Do you come here often?
Well, very often, actually. Yeah.
Yes.
So today we've been away for a little while. It's been a little while since we've had a.
We've been away from the podcast.
Yes,
I've been
that's
away.
what I mean. Yeah. And that's for a very good reason.
Mhm.
As it turns out, Isabel was out of the country.
I was indeed.
And do you want to tell us where exactly you were?
I was in the back blocks of Tennessee. In the USA, in a well-known to ultra runners town called Wartburg at Frozen Head State Park.
Yes, probably more the Frozen Head State Park is well
probably.
known.
Wartburg
not
itself.
so much.
No, it's well known to Barkley people,
Yes.
Barkers, but not to everyone else.
Wartburg is in fact the town that is right next to Frozen Head State Park, and it's where you do your shopping and everything when you're staying in the park.
Well, yes,
But
I mean your minimal shopping.
Yes, the
It's
park.
got a great chemist though, awesome chemist.
The park itself is just outside of the township.
Yeah, near the prison.
Yeah, you actually drive past the prison to get to the park. I remember when we were there in 22, I felt a bit guilty because we kept driving past the prison and it felt like all eyes were on us because
it was funny because this time I never saw anyone in the yard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, last time we would see them a lot in the yard, and this time, nah. They must have all been very naughty.
Yeah, because the prison doesn't have big block walls; it just has cyclone.
Yeah, razor wire
and that sort of thing. So you can actually see right into the prison.
Yeah, not into the prison buildings, but
no, but into the prison.
But it's
yard.
Interesting how they have the prison. It's like they've got it razor wired into areas, like big areas, all separate with all razor wired around it. I was talking about it with my daughter, and she was like, "Well, of course, if there's a breakout in one of them or some sort of riot in one of them, all the others are still locked down."
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought of that, so that's why there's so much razor wire and so many different sections.
Yeah.
And I was talking with, I don't know who I was talking with. I think with my daughter too. The one section, when you're coming out of Frozen Head, it looks like really low security, and she was discussing that she felt that was maybe like a rehab place.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
Maybe for people who've been involved in drugs and petty crime and that sort of stuff. And more of a rehab. And I did see people there like playing frisbee and that sort of stuff, but not in the prison itself. Normally we would see people in the prison itself when we were there in 22 in the yard, but not this time, not at all. It was a little bit eerie how empty it looked. Yeah,
maybe they're having a drop in crime and that wasn't full.
Yeah, I have my doubts. Although to be fair, if that was an Australian prison, it would be full because they walk around with guns and whatnot, and you'd be jailed for that here, but over there it's completely normal. So
that's right. And it's actually, particularly in that part of Tennessee, it's actually almost frowned upon if you don't.
Yes, that's right. You'd be a bit weird if you didn't.
There was a fella there that we spoke to when we were there last time. Oh my God, the laundry. Whose amazement was
that we didn't have guns.
That we didn't have guns and weren't allowed to own guns.
And he was like, you've had your God-given, not just government-given, but God-given right to have a gun taken away from you.
That's right. You really couldn't believe it.
No, it's just a different belief system, but it doesn't make them any worse people. Like I know some people, and we'll get into that, we're a bit nervous of Tennessee and people they'll just shoot you if you do anything. But I did lots of things that they would have perhaps thought was dangerous, and I was fine. Never got shot.
And I mean, we've spoken about it in the past, the people, particularly that we've had contact with, the locals are
lovely,
just really nice people.
Lovely country people, but that's fine. I have no problem with country people. I actually probably prefer them to city people because city people can be, quite frankly, assholes at times.
That's right. I mean, when we were there doing our washing in the laundromat and whatnot,
everyone was lovely.
Yeah, constantly striking up conversations with people, and
that was really nice. So yes, absolutely.
Yes,
so anyway,
you were there for
Barkley 2025.
Yes,
the year that the Barkley won.
Yes, boy did it win.
Oh yeah.
But it wasn't all plain sailing for you to actually get there.
It was it was leaping from one disaster to another, quite frankly.
And you couldn't even get out of this country before the first disaster.
No, before the first disaster hit, I was still here. Still here, and oh my God, and nearly didn't even make it to the US, because there we were. It was Sunday afternoon. My flight went out Monday morning, and I was going to get to Knoxville, the closest airport, at around 3:00 Monday afternoon.
Yes, you were supposed to fly out of Melbourne at about 8:00.
Yeah, something like 8:30, and head to Sydney to Dallas to Knoxville. I was going to pick up my rental car, drive to Wartburg, on the way pick up some food and shopping, and it's going to be easy and
time to perfection.
It was time to perfection. I chose that flight specifically. Anyway, Sunday afternoon, we're heading to Steve's for a massage, because he kindly said he would massage me Sunday afternoon just before I headed off, which was awesome. And I get a text message saying, your flight's been cancelled. You need to cancel all your flights. Ring up Qantas and cancel your flights, the rest of your flights, because we can't get you to Dallas. We can get you to Sydney. Awesome. Because that's where I want to go.
It wasn't cancelled. It was actually delayed by about 12 hours.
Yeah, but they told me to cancel my flight.
Yeah, because you weren't going to make your connections.
Yeah. So anyway, so I'm like, shit, but we were heading to a massage, and I had the time booked in, so we had to do that, even though it's not really a recipe for relaxation or supple muscles to be stressed to the bejesus. So anyway, we went home, and I hopped on the phone straight away and rang Qantas, and was on hold for a year and a half, and then finally got through, and finally she did change my flights, which was also a bit of a disaster. And I was leaving at midday, which basically meant we only had to leave an hour later. Even though it was originally going to be an 8:30 flight, we left like an hour later than what we would have anyway, because this time it was going to be an international flight. And we wanted to beat the traffic, but we forgot it was a public holiday, and so there was no traffic.
That's right. Yeah, we left early to beat the peak hour traffic, and then we realised as we were leaving, or as we were driving on the road, that there was no peak hour traffic.
There's no traffic.
It was a public holiday.
Anyway, so I was leaving Melbourne at midday, going straight to LA, my favourite airport.
You're just actually quite nervous about that.
Yeah, because I find it's so busy there, but it wasn't busy when I went this time, and now I find that quite overwhelming when I'm on my own. And then from LA to Charlotte to Knoxville, and I was getting into Knoxville at 9:30 at night. So then I had to,
considerably later than what
considerably later and dark, and getting a hire car and having to drive on the other side of the road, which I'd done a bit, I'm used to driving on the other side of the road, but it's not second nature, obviously. And, I was a little bit nervous about that. Anyway, we'll get into that. So then we go to the airport the next morning, and I've just felt funny because I never got a confirmation email about it. And we get to the airport, and she's like, no, you're not actually properly booked on those flights. And I'm like, is it going to be okay? And she's like,
yes, it's okay. But she had to call, I guess, her boss for them to make the proper changes and tick the proper boxes. So we were standing there for a little while. At the baggage check-in while she was sorting that, but she did, and she was great about it.
She was good. That was fine.
Very helpful.
And then I got on the world's shittest plane with the world's least leg room known to man. Like, seriously, it
should have been a dead giveaway when there was a man standing up front to push the prop to start it.
Yeah, that's right. The TV didn't work properly. Like, it was just shit. There was nowhere for me to charge my phone. When the guy put his seat back, it was like the front of the seat was practically touching my chest. I'm like, fuck. Like, it was just that. And that guy who leaned his chair back was coughing and spluttering. The woman, because I was on an aisle seat, the other aisle seat, she had this lap full of snotty tissues as she's like, it was just, and I'm just sitting there going, oh Jesus, please don't let me get sick, which of course clearly that prayer didn't work.
No, it didn't.
Anyway, so then I got to LA.
Prayed to the wrong God.
Yeah, it was. LA ended up being easy peasy, awesome. But the other thing I had about LA is you've actually got to go out of the airport and walk along the, where all the cars are coming and going, and it all just feels really backwards when you consider that it's freaking LA. Like, you'd think as one of the major airports that it would be a little bit the transitions to
between
it would be a little bit more, I don't know, nice. Anyway, so LA was fine. Got to Charlotte. Thought, oh, I've got an hour before the flight. Was that the flight? There was one flight where I had to run, and I was the last person on, and I nearly didn't make it.
No, that was Charlotte.
Then where did I sit and do the? It must have been at LA. I did the SIM card. Yeah,
it was.
So at LA, I got my American SIM that I'd purchased 3 months before because I'm super organized, and of course it wouldn't load. It wouldn't work. So I tried ringing the number that they said to ring. It was all automated, and you had to put in a number, and it said must be numbers only. And the number that I had on mine was numbers and letters. So it was like, well, that didn't work. And then, the SIM card itself had a QR code to read the instructions. I clicked the QR code, and it's like, this is no longer being paid for. So screw you. And so then I went on to the company, where they had a bot chat, and I asked it, and it sent me a link of, how to work through issues. And of course, the link went to a 404, didn't work. I'm like, fucking hell. And so I'm, like, what am I going to do when I get to Knoxville and I've got to drive to Wartburg and I've got no SIM card and no maps anyway. So I'm having kittens. So then I get to Charlotte, run to the next, because it was a 20-minute walk, and I was walking briskly, and there wasn't long between flights anyway. I was the last person on, and they were like just closing boarding, because I couldn't work out why other people were sprinting when we got off, but I'm like, oh, I'll be fine. And then oh no, I won't. Anyway, so I got on, got to Knoxville. And I thought, oh, I know, Telstra has a day pass. I'll do that. It's an extra $10 a day, but, I'll just suck it up. I won't need it while I'm in the park, so really it'll only be for a week. So I did the Telstra day pass, and it said it was, I got some email confirmation and a text confirmation or something, I don't know. Got my car, got out to the car, got my keys, going out to the car, and no internet, no maps, nothing. So there I am in the dark going, well,
in a strange place in the dark.
I guess I'll just drive to Wartburg. And I knew I wanted to stop at Oak Ridge and go to a Walmart. So I thought, well, I'll get to Walmart. I do recall from the other times that I've been there that it's not super difficult.
Yeah, because to get from Knoxville to Wartburg, you have to go through Oak Ridge, which is a big town, which is signposted.
That's right.
From Knoxville.
So I drive out of the airport, and I just drive in a straight line going, I'll just look for a sign that says Oak Ridge. There was one quite soon after that. So I just followed that. And then I'm driving along going, it feels way longer than I thought. And then I get to this split in the road, and it's like West Oak Ridge and East Oak Ridge. And I'm like, well, I have no freaking clue. So I just took a punt and went to West Oak Ridge, which was lucky because that was the right way. And then, I saw... I suddenly, I kept seeing lights, and no, this isn't Oak Ridge, and this isn't Oak Ridge. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should have gone to East Oak Ridge. What am I going to do? And I'm like, should I do a turn off? And sometimes I was dithering into the turn off lane. And then anyway, and so finally I came to the shops and saw Walmart and was like, thank God, because of course I could get free Wi-Fi there as well.
Fun fact, did you know that Oak Ridge is where they developed the nuclear bomb?
Oh, really?
Yeah, where the ones that they dropped on
I thought they only developed 6 million junk food shops.
No.
Oh, okay.
They had to feed the scientists somehow.
Okay, yes,
but yes, that is where they developed the nuclear bomb.
Wow.
So yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
So
yes,
that's where you were.
Yeah, oh, there you go. Did not know that. So anyway, so I went into Walmart, and it closed at 11, and I was like there at 10:30, quarter to 11 something.
Yeah.
And then I did my shopping, and I went to use my phone for tap and go. And of course, no tap and go. So I get out my card. And of course, because nobody uses cards here, I'd forgotten my PIN number. Used my birth date. No, that wasn't it.
For a change, strange.
Because I'm so security minded. I changed my PIN on the card later so I could use it again. And my daughter was with me later, and she saw me putting the PIN in that I'd come up with, and she's like, "Oh my God, Mum, that's terrible. I'm like, I know, how good is it?
What's wrong with 1111?
It was pretty much that kind of a number, because she had to use the card for something and she remembered the PIN number really easily. It was so insecure. But I just knew I had so much on my mind when I changed it. It was like, I've got to have something that there is no way I can forget.
Yeah.
I can't forget that number. Even you know which number it is, don't you? Like, don't say it.
No, I won't say it.
But you know
yes,
what it is. Yes, because, you know, it's like easy to remember.
Yes.
Anyway, it's 1112.
Yeah.
I was being really clever. So anyway, but luckily I had like just a little bit of cash in my wallet and I had just enough for the shopping. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even known how to have food. And like, I was starving by this stage. Like, you know, I'd been up for 36 hours eating. Oh, not only was the flight the worst, the food was goddamn worse than the leg space. It was heinous. It was.
That's what. It's the school.
Oh, I can hear the school music. It's the end of lunchtime.
Yeah, that's what happens when you fly Qantas.
Oh my God. Seriously, I thought Qantas would be good. And it was shocking. Like so bad. United was better. American Airlines is better. Like, I thought Qantas would be good. It was shit. And I'm sorry if Qantas hears this. This is not defamation. This is reality. It was terrible. Like, the food was awful. The leg space was awful. Everything about it was awful. I had the worst flight. The way back was a lot better, and it was still Qantas. It was heaps better.
It was a newer plane.
It was a newer plane, I presume, or they've, you know, if they've redone it.
Yeah.
All the planes are the same age. But on all the way there, it was just shit. It was just shit. And to do that with the flights the day before was just shit too.
Yeah.
And it was nothing to do with the cyclone or anything like that. Anyway,
no.
So so I was totally unimpressed with Qantas to the bajillionth degree. Where was I other than slagging
so
off
you
Qantas?
Were trying to figure out how you were going to find
so I was taking screenshots of the map to how to get to the Airbnb, because I knew how to get to Wartburg essentially, but the Airbnb was, you know, in the back streets, you know, and I don't know the back streets because last time we were there, we camped, and the time before that, I went to a different Airbnb, which was actually in Lansing, which was past Wartburg. So anyway, I'm having a little freak out because especially things are harder to find in the dark too. And I just hit the text from the day pass and just clicked the link they sent, and for some reason the day pass kicked in. Just for 12 hours it kicked in, can I just say. And I was able, thank God, to get to Wartburg and get to the Airbnb, because there's no way, I'm telling you right now, even with screenshots, I would not have found that. Anyway, so I got through Wartburg, and then it just dropped me. It just said, I'm in the middle of the road. It goes, you're at your location. I'm like, there's nothing fucking here. And so I go to the nearest house. It's midnight, people's in Tennessee, where they don't like strangers just rocking up their door. Well, nobody likes a stranger rocking up at their door at midnight.
No.
And so I look in, I can see some woman at her table doing something. I'm like, wow, she's up at midnight and her dogs are snarling, and that obviously hasn't alerted her to the fact that there's someone there. And I'm like, knock, knock, knock. And I look at her jump 6 million miles and look in terror at the door. And I'm just like, I'm scary, putting on my least scary face. And she comes to the door and I'm like, oh, you're not the Airbnb, are you? Because, of course, the pictures for the Airbnb didn't include the front of the house.
No.
So I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I thought, oh, it's 2-story. I knew the Airbnb was 2-story because my room was upstairs, supposedly.
Yep.
So it was 2-story, and I thought, maybe. And anyway, she's like, no, I'm not the Airbnb. Where? And she's like, I have no idea who that is. And then she went, oh, hang on, that's the name. Are you sure you want? Are you sure? Do you really want? And I'm starting to freak out because the way she was going on, like, do you really want to go there for Airbnb? Just turns out later they didn't get along because of the chickens. Because the chickens were always going in the other woman's yard, and she was getting her BB gun out and trying to shoot the chickens at the place that I ended up staying. God. She was like, well, she's 85 and I can't miss it. Oh my God, so funny. Yeah. And actually I think she ended up with a proper rifle and she still couldn't shoot them. So anyway, that's Wartburg. Yeah. So anyway, so I went, well, I'm going to have to go there. So, you know, so I went and went to the place that she said, which was just a bit further down the road. And I tried the code that I had, and yes, the door opened, thank Christ. And so then I went and brought all the shoppings in and promptly dropped the dozen eggs on the driveway. and there were just smashed eggs everywhere. And then I'm trying to carry shit in, and there's all egg goobies going here. I was just, and then she got up, and I'm like trying to clean up egg goobies, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. And then, so then, oh my God. So then I spoke to you, and by that stage, I'd been awake for over 36 hours. And doing all that driving, like it was over an hour's worth of driving, and most of it without maps and most of it freaking out. But like I said to you, it was an exercise in doing difficult things and pushing through when I'm frightened, when I'm not sure what I'm doing. And these are all things that are good for your mental strength. They're not fun, they're not ideal, but that's how you build mental strength. And always letting someone else help you through those kinds of situations is not good for your mental strength. And I remember thinking sort of, oh, if only Ron was here, he'd be better at this. And then I kind of thought to myself, just because you're male doesn't necessarily mean that you wouldn't be nervous and wouldn't make you any better at it than me. So why am I thinking I wish I had a man there to do the scary stuff? It's just a social construct that we've created. And I am not saying I don't like you doing things for me, but there's no actual reason other than the social construct of why I can't do it myself. And that's what I tell myself. There's no actual reason. I'm perfectly capable. I'm quite a capable human being. I can do this. I don't have to go, oh, I wish Ron was here, or, a man, so that I could just sit there and just do nothing, but that's kind of the social construct that we have become accustomed to, all of us. And I'm not blaming anybody, because I was doing it. I wanted it, to be looked after. But, throughout my life, I have learnt, certainly before I met you, that the only person who will look after me is me, and the only person I can rely on to look after me is me. So I just looked after me, and I got it done, and I was safe, and I was fine, and I got to the Airbnb, and everything worked out. It was not fun, but it worked out.
Yeah, that's right.
So just know, especially the women, but the men too, because some men, like I had someone say, oh, I would have just got a hotel in Knoxville. To be fair, I hadn't thought of that, but I just wasn't going to, because I wanted to get to Wartburg so I could train the next day, and it just wasn't an option for me. I was just going to fucking get there come hell or high water. So some men would have found it quite daunting too, if you ask me. Anyway, so I got up in the morning, and honestly, my eyes looked like piss holes in the sand. I was like, God, like this is bad, even for jet lag, like that, my eyes, and they were burning. My eyes were burning. They didn't stop burning the whole time I was over there, or until I started to get a little bit better, but they honestly were burning, and they looked red. Like they looked like I'd been on drugs all night. And anyway, so I got up and like, oh, I'll get up, and I got to adapt to the time zone straight away. So I was up at about 7 after getting to bed at like 1. And I went out to the park, and luckily, once again, the maps worked for the park to get to the park. They stopped working by the time I had to go home, but luckily I could remember how to get back to the Airbnb. And the map and the day pass never worked again. So it just for that little bit, so I could find things, and then I just memorized where everything was, and then I was fine. Anyway, so I'm out there on the trails, and I was just like, I just don't want to see any other runners. Like I really didn't want to see anyone, because I didn't want to see how fit and awesome they were, because I was feeling like a bag of crap. Anyway, so I'm out at this spot, and I just hear this voice, hello, hello. And then I'm like, because I'm looking around because I couldn't see him. And he's like, I'm over here. And I'm looking, he goes, no, over here. And I'm looking the other way. Anyway, so I meet this guy, and I'm like, oh, and he looked like a runner. He was wearing Hockers, I'm like, oh, are you here for the race? And he looked all shifty as a shit-ass rat. And I knew he was. And I went, but he looked like he didn't know what to say, And I said, I'm here for the race. And then he's like, oh, okay. Yes, I'm here for the race too.
Yes, because you're not allowed to admit to people that you're there for the race if they're not there for the race as well.
That's right. So, because, we don't want to give away when the race is. But I could tell, like, he had a buff around his wrist, and, he looked like a trail runner. And what would a trail runner be doing there? Anyway, so that was Kenny. That's how I met Kenny. And Kenny was awesome. I had such a fun week leading up to the race, because Kenny would talk the hind leg off whatever the saying is. I don't know. No, I can't remember. Anyway, which was great, because he kept me entertained, but not just entertained. He's so smart and so interesting. and just such a wonderful human being. Like, honestly, you know, it was awesome. And so Kenny and I, he was like, you're like my best friend now. He's very exuberant. Everyone became his best friend straight away. And he was known once we were at camp and everyone was there. He was just known. Everyone knew Kenny by the end, like, Jesus Christ. He's just one of those people. And he had the audacity to tell me while we were running that he's, you know, introverted. And I mean, maybe he is. I don't know. Maybe it's an act. I don't know. But it's a very, very convincing act that he's extroverted. Anyway, so we finished that run together and I sort of pointed out different points to him. So he found that helpful. So we ran, which was mostly hiking together for the next few days because I was just so stuffed. I could not run and my muscles and bones hurt so much that whenever I did, like, we even went to run down Quitters Road one day, Kenny and I couldn't run. I had to stop and have walking breaks running downhill because my body hurt so much because I'd been having fevers and chills during the night. Like, I'd be okay in the morning when Kenny and I ran together. I would be, you know, okay, as in not completely dying, but generally sort of almost okay. But then by the evening, I'd be so, like, my glands would be swollen, my throat, my nose, my eyes would be hanging out of my head. And then I'd go to bed and I'd be sweating all night. And don't worry, it wasn't menopause. It was just a pool of sweat, just sweating the whole night. Like, I would wake up and the sheets were wet. Everything was wet. It was just so gross. And, you know, if you're at home, you change your seats, but I'm in an Airbnb. What do you do? Every night I had to get back into that stinky, horrible bed. And it's like, oh, it smells like sick person. You know, that smell of a sick person? Oh, it was gross. And then I would just sweat again in them. And, get up in the morning and I'd drag my corpse out of the bed. And, it was just, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to be better by Monday, you know, and I'm going through tissues like it's going out of fashion. Oh, it was just horrible. So, and really disappointing. And I just couldn't eat. Like, I was forcing myself to eat, but I had no appetite. So I was eating, just going, okay, this is time to eat. So I'm going to eat. And I'd get, you know, like, I'd have a few mouthfuls. I'd have a little bit of hunger and a few mouthfuls and then be like, But I'll just make myself. And even then, most of my food I just ended up throwing in the bin because I couldn't finish it. And to be fair, American food is pretty shit. So it didn't, like, you know, it doesn't invite you to eat. No, you know, it's just, I don't find it, like, their hot roast chooks were pretty good. The Walmart hot roast chooks, have to say, that was good. Everything else was ordinary. Their milk has no flavor. Their salads, you know, those prepackaged salads I would buy, I would use half the dressing and it was too much dressing. I don't know. They must have it swimming. And the veggies are chopped so finely and it was just all hard. And I don't know, just not like I'm used to, essentially, but that's fine. I'm used to that from traveling, from eating. And I know what North American food's like. Like, you know, I lived in Canada for a year. I know what it's like. But it was even more off-putting to me because I was unwell. Yeah, that's right. You know, and so anyway, so then so you stayed in town, but you drove out to the park pretty much every day just to check out different areas of the park. Yeah, except Saturday when Kenny took me into Knoxville, because I said to him, you know, I've got no maps. I won't know how to find the massage place that I was going to, which I've been to before, but, you know, I use maps. So he kindly drove me there because he had to go to REI, which is like, you know, Kathmandu or something like that. So that was so helpful that he did that for me. You know, but yeah, basically that's, you know, I just go out to the park every day, you know, like, it's not exactly thrilling. But that's not what like, you were like, why don't you go sightseeing? And it's like, but I'm not there for that. And also I was so rooted. You know, I was just, and every position I sat in at the Airbnb made everything hurt. Like, I was constantly, my bones and muscles were hurting. And I'm like, I've done nothing. Why am I, it felt like DOMS constantly. And I'm like, why have I got DOMS? This is nothing. I've been training so hard and I was so strong before I left. And I literally, Kenny could take off from me on the hills easily, you know, and yes, he's a man and he's stronger than me, and that's fair, but I was beating you up some climbs. And so the way, how strong I was, I should have easily been able to keep up with Kenny, easily. Right. And so it was so disappointing, but I just tried not to dwell on it, you know, and I just took lots of vitamin C and just tried to think, you know, I'll be fine by Monday. Anyway, so Monday is the day that we had to be at the park. And so I went there early-ish to get my campsite.
Before we get to that, you did have a bit of excitement on.
Yes, some more excitement. It was like the Thursday or Friday night.
Yeah, I think it was your Thursday night, our Friday.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Because you were just about getting ready for bed, which is when we would.
Which is a euphemism for me sitting on my laptop looking at maps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't really getting ready for bed.
And because that was generally when we would have a video chat.
Yep.
So I looked up the weather app, which is what I was using to see what time it was in Wartburg, just to make sure it was the right time.
Yeah.
And up on my weather app, it flashed that there was a tornado warning. And I messaged you and said, it says here there's a tornado warning.
And I'm like, nah. And I looked at my weather app and went, oh, yeah.
And then just after that, like literally minutes after that,
I sent you a message going, fuck me. Because my phone started going, bah, 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 so loud. And I'm like, what the hell? I can't turn it down. And it's, tornado alert, go to your basement, and all this. And I'm like, nah, fuck it.
How bad can it be?
And I'm like, oh my God, it says this. And I sent you a screenshot of what it looked like. And I'm like, how exciting. But then, and you're like, should you go to the basement? I'm like, nah. But then the lady called me, come on down to the basement. I'm like, oh, okay. She probably feels a bit responsible for me. I'm like, are you sure? And she's like, yes. So I went down to the basement and the neighbor and her little baby came over. She was in the middle of bathing her baby and she just ripped him up and put a nappy on him and brought him over. All Rudy Nudie.
Yeah. And when the locals are taking the warning seriously, you probably should as well.
Yeah, but I kind of it would have been fine. It would have been fine. It got worse at 1 o'clock. So it was fine because basically we were in the eye of the tornado, essentially. So we were fine. And then when I went back upstairs, and everything's fine, I went to bed. And then around 1 or 2, oh my God. That's when the winds hit. And I honestly, because I was up in the lofty sort of area, I thought I was going to get blown away like bloody, what's her name?
Dorothy.
Yep. I was like, oh, I'm there in my pool of sweat going, what do? Yeah.
So that,
that provided some excitement. So anyway, so then Monday got to the park. Some friends went to pick up my daughter from the airport, whilst some other friends helped me. I supervised like a useless git. Once again, if I'd been on my own, I could have done it, no doubt. But there were some guys there that offered to help me, so I allied them. I may have asked them to.
Yeah.
So they put up the tent for me, the tent Mahal, like what's his name used to call his tent? What was his name? The Canadian. Oh my God.
I don't know.
Gary Robbins used to call his tent, set up the tent Mahal. Mine was a bit like that, only it was $100 Walmart tent, so it was gonna fall down if a breeze even looked at it. It was the worst tent. The windows were barely covered by like this thinnest bit of, oh my God, it was just shit. Anyway, it was a tent, whatever. It was better than sleeping in the open, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
And it was somewhere to store all our crap and all that. And so then Elizabeth got there, and that was awesome because I hadn't seen her since, July last year. And then,
the excitement of the.
Yeah, we heard that, numbers were being given out. So I went and lined up. And of course, I was sharing a camping spot with Kenny because Kenny and I discussed it, and he had cooker and all that. And at least then I didn't have to buy all that because I had to buy a tent and everything, which I'm not going to take home with me. And so, it was turned into a very expensive exercise, but that's all right. That's part of it. But at least with him, I could borrow his cooler, could borrow his cooker, and that was awesome. So thanks, Kenny. And then so we went and lined up and got my number, which was lucky 13.
Lucky 13. Unlucky for some, but
yes. And sure Elizabeth got very excited about that because that's her lucky number, and she thought it was a portent of good things. Right. She's even got a 13 tattooed on her leg, so she showed Laz that. Laz looked enthralled. Laz and Carl was like, yeah, okay. Right. Someone's getting excited, aren't they? We were like, oh, and I'm like, look. And they're like, okay. losers. So anyway, yeah, got that. And then, of course, the map site by then. So then we, as in Elizabeth, did some map drawing, and she was freaking out because she was worried she was going to send me off the wrong direction.
Do it upside down.
Yeah, so she was, but it also was good because, she's good at doing that sort of thing. Yeah. So it was good, because she'd been in the Army cadets and she knows a lot of all that sort of stuff. So, and it's good for me to have someone to help me with that because I do get a little anxious, let's say. Yeah. Don't necessarily always think as clearly as possible when I'm anxious. So then, me, Elizabeth, Kenny, and Olav, I don't know how to say it Swedish properly because the emphasis is different. And he was the other person because everyone has to share campsites. So yeah, it was me, Kenny, and Olav, and Steve, which was Kenny's crew, was in a tent, and Elizabeth was me, and Olav had his son Marcus. And Marcus stayed up to hear for the conch because he had an assignment due, so he had to work on that.
Because it's always good for someone to stay up, so
just in case the conch blows.
The conch blows at like 2 o'clock in the morning, then
because runners have slept through the conch before if they haven't had a crew. But as it turned out, we thought Steve was going to stay up, but to listen for the conch. As Elizabeth and I were going to bed, because Kenny was like, "Oh no, Steve will wake you. Steve will wake you." Steve was going to bed too, and we're like, "Aren't you going to be staying up for the conch?" She goes, "Nah." And then all of a sudden, "Oh no, Marcus will stay up." So we're like, "Marcus, can you wake us too?" And he's like, "Okay." He was sort of like, "Oh, I've got to wake everybody." Yeah. As it turns out, the conch didn't blow until 10:36 the next bloody morning.
Well and truly awake.
Oh my God, it was terrible. Just the dragging it out. Mind you, I was glad it wasn't in the dark, because getting ready in the dark is so much harder.
Yeah.
And at least I was already up. I'd had coffee. I ate because Elizabeth made me.
As awake as you're ever going to be.
Yeah. And because it had been freezing cold in the tent all night, I had a sore throat again and feeling like a bag of shit again. I had one day of feeling just like shit, not like a bag of shit. So that was an improvement. But then, I went back to, oh my God, sore throat, headache. And I don't normally get headaches. Like I'm not a headachy person, but with this cold, I had a headache the whole time. And I don't cope well with headaches. Yeah. I don't like them. They're horrible. And I just had a headache the whole time. And I had a headache with this cold and sore throat, and green goobies, and snot, and just not the race day I envisaged. No, I was not. But Elizabeth and I we're going to get a loop. We're going to get a minimum of a loop in on time, and I was still like, yes, I'm going to do it, because that was always my goal. Like I really had worked so hard. Anyway, so once the cigarette was lit and we ran off, and the first turn off we take off trail is a huge steep climb, and as soon as I started the climb, it's like my legs have nothing, like literally nothing, like nothing. It was so disappointing because I'd been feeling so strong and so awesome.
You had been doing it like a lot of climbing.
And it was like I'd done nothing.
Yeah.
And my legs were gassed. You know that feeling when you're gassed, when you've just been out all day and your legs are just, just barely turning over.
I know that feeling because I was getting that when we were doing our training runs.
That's right.
So I would
stop at the start.
I would stop and you'd do twice as much as me.
Because I was that strong. Yeah. But I literally had nothing, and it was I nearly started crying on that first climb because I just knew. I just was like, and I'm trying to suck air over a sore throat, and it's like, this is not the day that I visualized. Yeah. I can feel myself getting teary now because I was just so disappointed. I poured everything into this. Yeah. And to not even have a chance, have a chance.
Yeah.
Was so incredibly disappointing. But what can you do? What can you do? It was onwards and upwards, and I wasn't going to give up.
So you didn't turn around and go straight back to camp?
No, I was like, I'm just going to give it everything that I've got, even if that everything is 20% of what I normally have.
Yeah.
you know. And so I did what I could. I ended up with this group. And then on the second descent, my bloody pole snapped. So not only was I sick, I had one pole, which to climb hills, you know.
Particularly those hills.
Yeah, but luckily in the group that I was in, there was Ben, and he was like, "What size are your poles?" And I'm like, 115. He goes, "They're 100, mine's 120. Do you want it?" I'm like, "Oh, you sure?" "You sure?" And he's like, "Yep." And so I took it. And there was he, you know, it was one pole climbing hills easily. But the thing is, the group I was with, like, I should have been, you know, I was struggling sometimes to keep pace with them, but I should not have been struggling. I should have been powering at that. I know what my body was capable of. I know what I trained for, and I should have been. But anyway, you know, woulda, coulda, shoulda. We got, you know, it was still hard to find books. Navigation was hard. Finding books was hard. But I could tell my head was literally not in it. Like, you know, like there'd be discussions about where to go, and I'd just be standing there like a zombie. It was practically drool coming out of my mouth, you know, because I was just as useless. And I'm pretty good at navigating, I reckon.
And you'd studied the maps a lot.
Yeah, and I had studied the maps. And they did make some errors that I knew were wrong, but I didn't have, I would say, no, I don't think so. But I didn't have the force within me to push my point. Anyway, even though I later would end up being right. And sometimes I just didn't say anything, even though I knew, you know, because I just didn't have the capacity to explain why I knew I was right. I didn't, you know what I mean? So anyway, so but I could tell I was going to start slowing them down. Like I was really struggling on the climbs with the two poles. And when I say climbs, like hands and knees, sliding back down. I was scared I was going to snap Ben's pole all the time because I had snapped mine. So there's nothing stopping me snapping his. It was carbon fiber too. Anyway, so so once we got to book 8, which was halfway through, and we were 10 hours and 40 minutes. So we had a minimum of the same amount of time again, but you're only going to slow down, and we had a lot more night to go. So I thought, if I do another 12 hours, I'll be like, I won't be able to keep up with them because I'll be so sick. And I don't want them to wait for me because they were such lovely people. I could tell that they would be the kind that, no, we're not leaving you behind on your own. And so I just said, look, you know, I'm pulling out here. And they're like, no, you know, they were too nice to go. Oh, thank Christ. And they're like, and I'm like, yes. So anyway, so I did. And Olaf said he would go with me. And I sort of said, let's go the North Boundary Trail. And he's like, no, the fire roads will be faster and quicker. And I agreed with him, although I was kind of like, oh, I know they'd be faster and quicker, but I know the North Boundary Trail 100% will get us back. But anyway, so we went on the fire roads, and they're faster and quicker. They just took us to the wrong spot.
Took you in the wrong direction.
Oh my God, the actual opposite direction. We ended up in another county and on a bitumen road. And there was a truck there with some workmen in it, you know, and they had the truck going to keep them warm while they slept on the company dime. And so I'm like, oh, we need to ask them for help. And all of a sudden, no, they're from Tennessee. They'll have a gun. They'll shoot us. He was Swedish. And I'm like, no, she'll be right. And so I knock on the window, and they sort of lift up that thing and look at me and then pull the things back over their head. And I'm like, you know, I mean, I must have looked like a banshee. My hair was, because it had caught on so many different things. Next time if I go, I'm getting braids, because this little bobbly thing up the top, I was constantly, you know, getting dragged backwards by bushes and shit. And it was just, I looked like I looked like an escaped prisoner. So I knocked again, putting on my most feminine voice so they knew I wasn't Australian. And so they eventually took it off and they wind the window down, and I could barely understand them. I could understand Olaf, who was Swedish, speaking English more than I could understand the Tennesseans speaking English. Anyway, so they're like, what's going on? And we're like, oh, we're in this race and we're lost. Where do we go? And they're like, well, it's a 7-mile walk to the prison, which is the old prison.
The old prison, which is what the race goes through.
Yeah, and then you have to go like another 30 Ks walk to get back to...
Yeah, which is kind of on the opposite side of the park from the finish line, yeah.
And I was hoping that, you know, they would give us a lift, but no, they didn't even offer. And they're like, and we're like, oh, we've walked here. And they're like, oh, where are you from? And he goes, I'm from Sweden. I said, I'm from Australia. We've walked a really long way. I thought it was such a funny joke. And they just looked at me like,
What?
She's an idiot. I'm like, oh, and they're like, what the hell? I think they nearly got the gun out and shot me then. Just for my shit joke. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, well, thanks for your help, which was pretty much none, because I was planning on going in that direction anyway, because my spidey senses told me that was the correct direction anyway. And so we're going along the road, me with my one pole, because I gave the other pole back to Ben, of course, when we split up. And you know, all I was going, we're going too fast. We're going too fast for you know, another 4 hours. We'd already been walking for 4 hours. For another 4 hours of walking, I'm like, I'm just, you know, I knew I wanted to get back to camp. Because he kept talking about, oh, we're going to be hours. We're going to be more than 30 hours, and they're going to send out a search party. And I was freaking out. Because it's a self-extraction race. Anyway, so we're going along the road, and then I remembered that there's a trail that goes up to the fire tower. And I said to Olaf, we're going up that one. And he still kind of wanted to go into town, and, you know, get the police help and that sort of stuff. And I'm like, I do not want to do that. I don't think Laz would love that. You know, getting away from the cops, because it could be fucked walking. So I led us up to the fire tower. And then, so that was about 4.5K all uphill. And then it was a 5K jiggity jog down and to the camp. And and then we made it into camp, and Laz is like, are you finishing a loop? I'm like, no. We got out there and we got lost, and I think he thought, yeah, great, well done. And he was like, oh, it's been absolute carnage out there. And I said, I am not surprised. And essentially no female finished one loop. The closest a female got was you know, the cutoff is 13 hours 20. She was like 13 hours and 22 minutes or something. And that was only one female.
And that's a cutoff for the fun run.
That's a cutoff for the fun run.
Not the cutoff for the full 5.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So so it was an event for the ages. It was incredibly disappointing. And then after we had taps, and they're like, go have a hot shower. I'm like, yeah, I'll have a hot shower, because I've got all these scratches on my legs, and that'll be nice. Go to the shower, and all the hot water's been used. It was only cold water, and there am I naked, with cold water, and I'd sort of already started soaping my legs. So it's like, well, this has got to be done now. And it wasn't just like lukewarm water, it was like freezing freaking cold water. And normally also the bathhouses are heated, and I believe the men's were, but the women's weren't.
Oh, weren't they?
No. Because there'd been issues with the bathhouses this year, and the women's were not. I could hear the heater kicking in the men's, but the women's was not. Because you know how normally you'd open the door and it would kick in? The women's was not, and there was no hot water, and I was just about ready to cry. But Elizabeth was like, come on, you can do this, you know, clean your legs, because we had to, because, you know, I didn't want to get infected.
Yeah, because you got quite scratched up.
Yeah, because even though I wore long shorts, it was because I was sliding down so many hills, they got lifted up, and just, And I wore my gaiters, so my lower legs were fine this year. And then, you know, we went back into the tent, and Elizabeth put all polysporin, which is antibiotic cream that you get in Canada, which is awesome. And you can get it in the States too. And so that stopped it getting all infected. I still had to have a proper shower at the hotel the next day, like to properly clean it. And just because, you know, like, God, I woke up in the morning, because I hadn't wet my hair, obviously, because A, it was cold, and B, I didn't want to go to bed freezing to death as it was with wet hair. And there were just sticks all over my pillow, like just pillows covered in sticks. I'm like, oh my God. And that was just all that had fallen out of my hair during the night. So so it was just everything that could go wrong seemed to go wrong this trip. Everything. It was honestly like everything. And it seems to be every time I do Barkley, it's the year that nobody finishes, because every time I do Barkley, it's where they add another book.
That's right.
2019, people in 2018 had finished, so they made 2019 harder. When I went in 2022, people in 21 had finished, so they made it harder. And like when you 2023, they made it easier. He dropped a book and he made it easier. Then last year, 24, they added a book, I think, or kept it much the same. I think
they kept it much the same. They kept
the same number of books, but changed the course a little bit. And then people finished again. So I think 2 or 3 people finished in 23, 5 people finished in 24. And so we made it super hard. So it seems to be every time I go, it's like a rebound effect from too many people finishing. And so, I kind of knew after last year that he would be making this year harder.
That's right. And he added 2 or 3 books?
No, 1 book.
Was it?
Over last year, but increased the distance by heaps.
And climbing. There was an extra
Oh my God, heaps of extra climbing, heaps of extra distance. Like, oh my God. So yeah, it was an adventure. And I mean, like Dina said, as we were sliding down mud hills, going, how much fun is it being an adult playing in the mud? And it's like, it's so true. And I really was like, yeah, you're right. I mean, that lasted for a whole 30 seconds, that feeling of, this is fun.
Until you got to stick up your butt.
Oh my God, the stick up my butt. And when I say it was up my butt, people, it was up my butt. I had to stop myself sliding because I was terrified I would end up in a hospital with a stick impaled. Having to have a stick removed.
Explain that one.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, it was quite painful. I'm like, oh my God. And it was such a steep hill, and I'm trying, and there's a guy behind me. I'm like, stop, I've got to stick up my ass. So I had to remove said stick before I could keep sliding down. Oh, that was horrible. That was quite painful. But it did make for a funny story for my daughter. She thought that was hilarious. And I nearly got impaled on a stick. So yes.
But I mean, that just illustrates, how steep it is, and how, it's not just, wandering up a hill.
No, it's not just a hill like at the Buffalo Stampede or at GSER. It's like you have no idea. It makes those hills look like, candy ass trails.
Yeah, that's right.
It's hard. Like you have people go, oh yeah, Barkley's hard. But until you go to it, you have no idea of how hard it is.
Yeah.
Which is kind of awesome, but it's also just kind of, it's kind of depressing. But yeah, no, it is awesome. I mean, it is kind of cool. And the day before the race, the Sunday, I was talking to one of the guys involved in the organization. I said, there was a tornado here the other day. What would you do in the middle of if there was a tornado in the middle of the race? How would you stop the race? Install your
was a
tornado protocol.
Tornado protocol.
Everyone put your poles away. It's a tornado protocol. Shelter in place. And he's like, well, we'd go and shelter in the toilets. The runners would be fine out there. Yeah, whatever. And there was no mandatory kit. I could take nothing or I could take everything. Nobody looked. Nobody cared. You have to look after yourself. And that's what I love about the Barkley.
You're expected to take responsibility for your own
self-responsibility.
Yep.
None of this lightning protocol bullshit. None of this, oh my God, it's raining, we better postpone the race or cancel the race. I mean, they'd keep it going if there's a goddamn tornado. And if they knew the day before that there was going to be a tornado, they wouldn't postpone the race.
No, they wouldn't.
They would just they'd go, oh, there's going to be a tornado. You better be prepared,
Yeah,
peeps.
That's right. People, be aware there's going to be a tornado, so look after yourselves while you're out
that's
there.
right. Like, I mean...
Yeah.
And I want to say something about our last podcast, because it came out at an unfortunate time where I was saying, oh my God, they stopped races for rain. At the time, we did not know 6 Foot Track had been cancelled.
No, we found that out after.
That was before we knew.
Yeah.
So, because some people were like, oh, were you talking about 6 Foot Track then? No, I was not.
No.
Been like if I'd known, but I wasn't. So no, we didn't know.
We didn't know. We read about it after.
Yeah, like a couple of hours after.
Yeah, later on in the afternoon after we'd done it.
Yeah,
but it kind of illustrated our point.
Yes, it did. And to be fair, though, I don't think that was fully the 6 Foot Track. It was the parks.
Yeah.
But either way, ridiculous parks. But the parks in America wouldn't have shut the race down.
No.
So it's just like self-responsibility, and none of this mandatory kit bullshit, carrying 3 ton. You're doing an ultra on the beach and you've got to take waterproof pants, thermal top, waterproof jacket, buff. It's like, seriously, I'm not going. I mean, I don't have to wear that much in Switzerland.
Yeah.
When I race in Switzerland, I'll take a raincoat. You'll be right. Like, seriously, and I'm on the coast in Melbourne, and I've got to take. It's just ridiculous. Like, seriously, come on, seriously. Anyhow, I could do a whole podcast ranting from my high horse, soapbox placed upon my high horse. Yes. So anyway, so yes, none of that.
And the response, my bugbear is the response that, when things are stopped like that, everyone starts shouting, oh, safety first.
Oh, thank you for keeping us safe.
First. Well, if that's your concern, if safety
Don't
first is
trail
your
run.
concern, don't do trail running.
Don't do ultra running or trail running.
No, because if that's how you live, then this is not the sport for you.
It is not. All this, oh my God, thank you so much for keeping me safe. I'm a grown-ass woman. I don't need somebody keeping me safe, for the love of
That's
God.
right. You keep yourself safe.
Yeah, I think I know how to keep myself safe. That's how I've managed to live for 54 goddamn years.
Yeah, that's
right. You know, like seriously, I don't need some authority figure keeping me safe. That makes me want to vomit.
Yeah.
And and if you want a safe sport, go and take up bowls. And even then you might pull your back. So watch out.
Yeah.
Like seriously, thank you for keeping me safe. Oh, it's all about safety. No, it's not. It's all about sliding down a cliffy, sticky hill, nearly dying, nearly breaking your ankle, which quite frankly, I thought I would. And I was a bit nervous at one point. I thought, fuck, I nearly broke my ankle. And you know what? Like that's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about being on the edge of reason and the edge of safety and going, whoo, this is fun.
Yeah, that's right.
Not going, oh, thank God I've got somebody keeping me safe.
Yeah.
Sorry, you got to put on a stupid face and voice too when you say like, okay, I know some people are going to disagree with us, but seriously, if you're worried about safety, then do a road race. Don't do trail running. Don't do ultra running. And maybe
apparently Melbourne Marathon is very safe.
Yes,
so
you know, but you might even trip over a crack in the road. Like, you know, they should just smooth. They should have a grinder out grinding everything and making it perfectly safe.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Anyway. I could go on for hours, and I sometimes do.
And you do. That's right. You do. You just not at the expense of the podcast.
Yes,
so.
I know. But people want to hear it. People do. I know. I can feel it in my bones. So I'm still a bit goobly, and like I even woke up like yesterday morning with a sore throat. I had such a bad headache last night. During the night, I actually got up and took painkillers because I couldn't sleep. And it wasn't like a headache from my neck. It was the headache that I've had from being sick, where it feels like my brain is pressing on my skull.
Because of course, just as you were starting to improve, then of course you had to get back on a plane for another 30.
Yeah, that's right. And oh my God, there were these kids coughing, and you know, and they were coughing, and you know how you can tell when you hear you can hear a hand going over a mouth. No, there were no hands. There was nothing going over those disease-ridden mouths. And they were just coughing, and their parents were next to them. And you know, if that was my kid, I'd be like, put your hand over your mouth.
Yeah.
You know, but no, just like seriously, I thought, you know, COVID was the most stupid thing ever, but maybe it'll teach people that you should actually, you know, cover yourself when you cough.
Yeah.
But no, people are more gross, I reckon.
Yeah.
Because they think, oh, well, if we're sick, if it's really bad, we'll wear a mask. If it's not bad, it doesn't matter.
If it's really bad, they'll give us
they'll take care of us.
Yeah, that's right.
They'll look after us. But because they're not looking after us now and telling us what to do, like, I'll put a mask on, I can just cough. It doesn't matter because it's safe now. Like, anyway. And this is the problem. We create dependency and, you know, the inability to look after ourselves by people taking care of us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but anyway, yeah. I'm trying to de-stress.
This podcast has taken quite a severe turn all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah, I'm just like one of those grumpy old, like, you know, for a while there was a whole grumpy old men thing, and they do whole shows on them. You could do a whole show with me, just me being a grumpy old woman going, back in my day, we just, you know, whatever. Anyway. Yeah. So anyway,
yeah, your trip to the States was full of
adventure,
trials and tribulations.
Yes, it was not the trip I wanted. It was not the trip but I actually had so much fun in camp with everyone that I met and all my old friends that I hadn't seen since 2019. We didn't make a lot of friends in 2022 because it was raining so much, so everyone was always in tents and whatnot. And 2019, I made lots of friends, and I saw a lot of them again and made some wonderful, awesome new friends and lots of laughs, and bonded beautifully with my daughter. Like, it was just so amazing with my daughter. It was brilliant. Like, you know, I loved it when my kids were little. Like, I just want to feel their little cuddly cuddles again. But to bond with your grown children is really special. And it was brilliant. And so awesome. Like, you know, just so awesome. I was so happy for that alone. And like she, you know, she posted about it later and she was like, you know, bucket dream or whatever fulfilled, you know. And so, you know, to go to be at the Barkley Marathons, like she was so wrapped. And for me to be able to give her that experience was like really meaningful for me. So it wasn't all doom and gloom. I still got a lot out of it. I didn't get the race I wanted, but I definitely got the experience I wanted.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say I got an experience I didn't expect. It was just awesome. Like meeting Kenny. And then because Kenny was so outgoing, that's why I met so many other people. Because normally I would have just sort of kept my head down, but he would be going up to people, you know. I mean, we went out for lunch when we were in Knoxville. And we're just walking back to the car, and there's this nice car and this woman getting in, and he's like, "Oh my God, you've got the most amazing ride!" Like, I'm not even going to try and put on his Alabama accent, but it's cool. And she was like, "Oh," and I'm just like, I would never say that to a random stranger, but it was so awesome, and it was just, you know, exemplified how he would just talk to anybody, and everyone would respond. You would see people's faces just light up from his enthusiasm and just how he spread this happiness. And, you know, it's contagious, that kind of attitude. And it was just awesome. It was awesome. So I think, you know, I kind of caught that off him, and it was, of all the things to catch, that was a good thing to catch.
Yeah, yeah.
The cold wasn't, but that awesome spirit. I just don't know if I'd have the energy. It must take a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Like Elizabeth and I were like, oh my God, like, she's like, how old is he? And I said, 48. She's like, really? Because that energy was like of a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, she doesn't have that energy and she's 24. You know, I don't know many people who do. We're like, far out, we want those drugs that he is on, except he's not. Like, he doesn't even really take caffeine. So I don't know.
Need to.
No, he does. Like, if he took caffeine, oh my God, that would be frightening.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, just awesome. And because of him, you know, I talked to more people, met more people, and, you know, and which was great, you know. So it was good, because I am actually, believe it or not, quite shy, and I find it awkward to talk to people, as in I don't know how to start conversations, and I'm not good at that. So yeah, so it was awesome to have him there to break the ice with people. And yeah, it was really fun. And it was great to spend that time with my daughter, you know, snuggled up in our beds, freezing our asses off, but talking, you know, in the tent. And, you know, it was really nice. Yeah, it was good from that perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
Definitely you saw the good side of the Barkley.
Yeah, there is. And the community. And that's what I love about ultra running, and what I love about these grassroots races. Although, you know, Barkley is over the top now a bit, social media wise, but it still is a grassroots
when you're
race.
there, you know,
it's a grassroots
when you're there
race.
And because it's such a small community.
Yeah,
very much grassroots.
Yeah, and that's what I love. I love the grassroots races. So yeah, so anyway, that was
your Barkley experience.
Yeah, and it was awesome, and it was horrible, and that's what it's about.
Yeah,
you know, it was horribly awesome. It was awesomely horrible. So thank you for listening to this very long podcast. I hope you find it entertaining. Pardon me, I just needed to burp then, but don't worry, I swallowed it for you guys.
Thank you.
I could have let it rip. I probably should have, and then people would be so horrified, and they'd know what I'm really like.
That's right. Then I'd experience my life.
I even burped in front of Kenny on the first day, and he was very impressed.
As he should be.
Yes. Anyway, so thank you for joining us. We will be back next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about.
Well, our training will be changing significantly now.
Yes.
Less climbing, more running.
More running away. Like, we're going to do 30Ks tomorrow with only like 600 meters climbing.
Yeah.
What?
I know. Is
that a lie? Is that legal?
That would have been 30Ks with 3,000 meters of climbing.
More? 4,000?
Oh, yeah, over 30Ks, probably not quite that much.
Yeah. Anyway.
We're not.
I think I did write about that. Anyway. So I'm going to be running, and that's going to be really hard, because I think my legs have forgotten how to do that for a prolonged period. So bear with, Ron, bear with. So yes, because I'm training now for the Isle, and we're training, even though I'm racing.
Yeah.
We're training for the Isle of Skye Ultra, which is 75 miles, which is approximately 123 Ks on the Isle of Skye in Scotland.
With only about
3,000-ish meters of climbing over 120 kilometers, which is flat as a pancake.
That's right. It might as well be the Melbourne Marathon.
It might as well be.
with a bit of mud and rock and bog thrown in.
Yeah, so that's that one to look forward to. So training has begun again. Done my intervals on Thursday, and that was a rude wake-up call, especially because I was still hacking up half a lung. But don't worry, I'm totally not into running when you're sick, but I'm good enough to train, just not good enough to be optimal. Anyway, so that's that, and so we shall. So now, of course, we have to pivot, and as I was saying, specificity of training. So, flatter, rockier, that sort of thing.
Trying to mimic a little bit more of what's coming up. Yeah.
So no more lie bird repeats for me. No. If you ever see me doing them again, you know what's happening.
That's right.
Yes. So all fun and games, and that's that it. Essentially.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. We do appreciate it, and we hope you join us next week for our podcast on. That's code for
right.
I don't know.
That's code for watch this space.
Yeah, maybe you guys shoot us a message, not text message, DM or whatever kind of comment or something, and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
Because we do enjoy a ramble, but it'd be nice to be a little more specific
and helpful for you guys. But I figured this was a good story to tell. All righty, have a great one, everyone, and we will catch you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.